Good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all in the third session for the second day of our activity. We have two of the experts available with us today in this session from eInfochips. The first speaker for the session is Mr. Rajesh Yadav. He has worked as research engineer at NorthCap University. Uh, he has worked as physical design engineer and layout design engineer at IIT Gandhinagar on various government-funded projects. He is currently working as senior physical design engineer at eInfochips. He has worked on the various node technologies of 180 nanometer, 65 nanometer, 28 nanometer, 14 nanometer, 7 nanometer. So he has got huge expertise, and with him, we have the second speaker available with us, uh, Ruchita Shah. She is also from eInfochips. She has completed her master's from Ganpat University. Currently, she is working as a physical design engineer at eInfochips. Her expertise is in physical design, placement and routing, and TCS scripting. I hope the participants will be making the session interactive, and I request both the speakers to start the session.
Thank you so much. So, hello everyone, myself Ruchita Shah, and with me there is Rajesh Yadav. Today we are going to talk about fundamentals of physical design. So, let's start. So, this is the agenda for today's session. We'll start with the introduction and then talk about some conductor industry ecosystem, followed by ASIC design overview, then EDA tools which are used for ASIC design, followed by physical design flow, and then we'll cover sign-off overview and end with the Q&A session. So let me talk about something for eInfochips. So basically, eInfochips is working in two parallel divisions. One is ASIC and second is product engineering services. And in both these divisions, like in ASIC division, there are a few departments like design, verification, design for testability, that is DFT, and physical design. And in PES, we have quality analysis, QA, software, embedded system, and IoT. Basically, eInfochips is 21-year-old, and we have 80% of revenue that is connected with devices and cloud systems, and we have 500 plus products out now, and the company is like families of 1500 plus employees, and basically we have like in consumer software, consumer electronics, semiconductors, and aerospace. We have expanded our business in all this parallel services. These are the major clients: Intel, Qualcomm, Google, then Fungible, GUC. These are our major clients in semiconductor as well as in PES. So we have like various awards and recognition that we have won in several areas, which is mentioned over here. So we'll start with semiconductor industry ecosystem, and that will cover by Rajesh Yadav. Over to you. Yes.
Hello. Hello and welcome to all the respected faculty of DDIT. So I am Rajesh. I will cover this slide onwards. So first of all, is it audible clearly? Sorry. Can
Yes,
anyone
sir.
give?
Audible, sir.
Yeah, you are audible.
Yeah, thanks. So first of all, I would like to talk something about the semiconductor industry ecosystem. as we know that no one industry can develop a product individually. So there must be an ecosystem in which I would like to talk here. You can see there are various type of industry is involved for developing any product here, right? So whatever product you are using, electronics, gadgets that are directly fabricated from the foundry. Okay, and so there are two type of foundry. First of all, one is pure play foundry, like we must know TSMC is the leader, then Global Foundry, UMC. So these pure play foundries has business. They fabricate the chips for the other companies, not its own. And in parallelly, there are other type of product company, like we know that Intel, Samsung, they develop the product as well as they have their own foundry. The one most important type of industry is product companies, but they are having fabless. They don't have fab. In that sector, well-known player is Qualcomm, Apple, AMD, MediaTek. They all develop the product, but for the fabrication, they depend on the pure play foundry like TSMC, Global Foundry, and UMC, right? So majorly, whatever we product see in our side, they are branding like Samsung, Intel, Qualcomm, which means these company has the ownership of that product, right? Then next important sector comes the service company. So service company it's a type of company which has expertise on a specific field. Here lots of companies are there. Infochips comes in the ASIC sector, service company. So these product company, fabless or fab companies, for expertise, they give their projects to us, and we work on that, and we develop the things. But since ownership is for the product company, so you will see the product by their name, right? And the one of and to enable all these the product company and service companies, we need EDA tools. That is the CAD tools through which we will design the things. So there are EDA companies and major players in this sector is Cadence, Synopsys, Mentor Graphics, now acquired by the Siemens, Keysight, Ansys, Silvaco. In academics also, we generally use the Cadence, Synopsys, Silvaco tools. Okay. So apart from that, in right side, you will see some companies which are less known because they basically service to the pure either product company or the foundry. And like you will see equipment vendors. One of the name ASML is the top player in this sector. Again, the wafer manufacturing company are there. Then mask house is there. And Top-End Photomask is the leading name in the mask house. So overall, these slides, I want to say that these are so these are well connected, and by the collaboration of all these things, any products come in our hand. Okay. So next, I am going to present ASIC design overview. So there are basically two types. One is the full custom design, and second is the semi-custom design. In full custom design, everything is being developed by through scratch, from the scratch. Like we'll take the transistors and build the any logics, and from the logic we'll build the any device. Okay. So here we know that memories, SRAM designs, all the things comes in this sector. Then analog IPs development. And second is semi-custom design, where we not build all the things from scratch. We will use the standard cells there. So again, I would say there are we can categorize three types. One is standard cell-based ASIC. Second, we can say the gate array-based ASIC. Third, we can say that programmable ASIC. And again, in programmable ASIC, there may be PLDs and FPGAs. Okay, so moving forward, here is the overall ASIC design flow. So whenever we think to develop any product, so first thing we will jot down what functionality we want. So in layman language, we can say that we will write down what exactly we want from that chip. So we will build a design specification, we can say. Then based on that design specifications, RTL will be written, means that functionality will be written in terms of RTL code. Then next, we'll verify whatever we want to achieve is that RTL code is correctly properly working or not. So then RTL verification followed by the DFT insertions. Then we come to the logic synthesis. Then we do the pre-layout synthesis, pre-layout STA. Followed by one of the things is called logic equivalence check here. So we cannot rely directly to the any synthesis tool. So we'll verify that whatever we have written the RTL code and the synthesis tool had given the synthesize netlist is logically equivalent or not. Then we start with the from this LEC, we'll enter into the physical design. So I will explain all the things in details in the coming slides. So briefly, I will say first we'll check the sanity, that all the inputs are correct or not. Then we'll do the floor plan. Again, inside the floor plan, there are lots of steps. We will go in details in the coming slides. Then followed by placement, then CTS, then routing. After routing, again, we will do the RC extraction. We know that every wire is drawn on the chip has some resistance and capacitance. So we have to consider that resistance and capacitance. So we call it RC extraction steps. And taking care of that RC extractions, we do the timing sign-off, then moving forward IR sign-off, then physical verification, and finally we will tape out. Tape out means we will send our GTS to the foundry. Okay, so it was the basic overview how any product is being developed in the any ASIC is being developed. Okay, so I would next like to talk about some major tools which are very popular in industry. So first of all, RTL design and verification sites. So again, there are major three players here: Cadence, Synopsys, and Mentor Graphics. Now, Mentor Graphics is a part of Siemens, so it is acquired 2-3 years back. So in RTL design and verifications, for Cadence, we have a tool ANSYSIM. Synopsys is having tool VCS, which is very popular tool in the industry. Mentor Graphics having tool ModelSim and QuestaSim. QuestaSim is, I think, one of the leading tool in verification field. Then in DFT, Cadence provides Modus. Synopsys is DFT compiler, Tetramax. Then Mentor Graphics is a DFT, has DFT advisor. Coming to logic synthesis, Cadence having Genus, and Synopsys is having design compiler. A design compiler is although a leading tool right now, which is mostly used. Coming to the logic equivalence check, Cadence having conformal tool, and Synopsys having formality. Then PNR, which is place and route. Cadence is having Innovus. Earlier, you might be worked on the Encounter SoC, that is later renamed to the Innovus. And Synopsys is having IC compiler. Again, in the logic synthesis, we previously, Genus was not there. I think RTL compiler was the tool. Again, come to the RC extraction. Cadence is having Quantus tool and Synopsys is Star RC. For the static timing analysis, Prime Time is the leading tool, which is from Synopsys, and second most used tool is the Tempus, which is from Cadence. Then come to one more tool is quite popular in the industry, that is Tweaker. It is from the Dorado company. Then physical verifications, the leading tool is Calibre here, which is from Mental Graphics, and then IC verification is from Synopsys. In IR analysis, we have a very popular tool right now, RedHawk, which is from ANSYS, and Cadence is, and Voltef from Cadence. So these are the major tools which is popularly means widely used in the industry. Okay, moving forward to the physical design flow. So now we have narrowed down the flow only to the physical design. So first of all, for starting the physical design, we need certain inputs to start the physical design, and those based on those inputs, we will import those inputs in a EDA tools that is called import design. And after importing the design, we do the sanity checks. Sanity checks, I will talk more details in the coming slides. So just for now, we do a sanity checks. Then the floor plan steps come where we do the block partitioning, followed by the pin placement, followed by the macro placement. Then power planning we do the pre-placement cell placement, pre-placed cell placement. Then coming to one step here, we do the BAFE DRC checks. I would like to say in the earlier node, we don't do the BAFE DRC at this stage, but 7 nanometer and onwards, we have to do the BAFE DRC here. Because there are lots of violations coming in the poly layers here. So we fix the BAFE DRC once our macro is placed, followed by we'll verify the PG pins. Is there any shorts, whatever. We built the power planning here and place the pin placement. So we'll verify once here. Then we will start the placement stage. Placement, after doing the placement, we will analyze the congestion and timing. I would like to say it is not easy that you would get your desired QOR, quality of result, in one step. So you have to iterate many times starting from the macro placement to the placement stage again and again until we will get a better QR. And once we get a satisfactory QR, we can move to the CTS stage. So again, we built the clock tree. We will route the clock tree, then go to the analysis of the clock tree. Whatever we built is good or not, means can we accept that power, latency, all the things or not. If all okay, then we will move forward and do the routing. And after routing, we will analyze again the post-route QR. If everything is okay, then we call. Now we can move to the ECO phase. So again, ECO phase, we will do lots of sign-off there. But why it calls ECO? Because means ECO means here engineering change order. So we will not again going to open the PNR. Just will whatever changes we want to do, we will do on the routing database incrementally. We'll fix something and save the database. Again, we'll fix another issue, which means close another issue and incrementally save the database. So doing again all the sign-offs, then finally we'll move to the tape out phase. Okay, so what is the design goal for any chip? So as we know that as we want best PPA. Here PPA means power, performance, and area, 3 factors. We always want lower power. Our chip should take the lowest power. Then every new designs should have a better performance and area should reduce. Why? Because if we scale down the our design means logics, so we can place more and more logic inside a chip, and we can get more and more functionality. And that's why you must see that in today's we are having 7 nanometer processors. Starting from at least we have worked. I have started working from 180 nanometer. So in every nodes, we are scaling the transistor size. We are getting the more functionality. We are increasing the performance. We are decreasing the power. You must have seen that the earlier days laptops power battery backup, and nowadays laptops battery backup. So we have improved a lot. Okay, moving forward, I would talk something about standard cell here, because all the design are in terms of standard cell only here in physical design. So we are, as I mentioned earlier, we are not going to build using the transistors any gates. Already the gate are characterized and built there. We call it standard cell. Okay, so in standard cell there are certain its characteristics, like all the cells are having fixed height and same height in a design. Then VDD and VFF location are fixed, and it is always in bottom and top. As you can see, I have tried to put here a layout. We cannot put the actual layout due to there are lots of NDA of all the tools and all the things. So just I have drawn here layout. So you can see VDD and VFF are on top always. Then here is your PMOS will build here, NMOS will build, and so Anvil will be here, and its P substrate is here. So Anvil is continuous. So again, I will put the next standard cell near here. I have not shown here Anvil and Anvil, just active area I have shown here and contacts. So Anvil will abut with the existing Anvil here. So Anvil will be continued. So it gives a uniform layout. It provides a well continuity, and all the standard cell are pre-verified and characterized. So there is no chances that any layout error will come inside your standard cell, because it is already verified and characterized. So it help to reduce the design time. One of the best advantage of using the standard cell. We can design cycle we can reduce, so we can easily market it on time. Next, coming to the standard cell library. So whenever you start a physical design, you need a standard cell library, and that standard cell library will comprises your all the complex gates, all the basic gates and universal gates, comparator cells, CTS cells, flip-flop and latches, physical only cell, and many more things. These are the major things. Again, for the each cell we have the multi-VT flavors. So SVT cells are there, low VT cells are there, ultra low VT cells are there. For single standard cells, we use them wisely to reduce the power sometime for timing and power the balances. Then we have the multi-drive strength cells. We have their timing library and physical library. Then for each cells, we are having their netlist, GDS, and their SPICE model for the SPICE simulations. Okay, moving forward, what are the input file required for the start the physical design? So in the first part, I would here is the list of mandatory files which we must have to start the physical design. So first is gate level netlist, second SDC file, then logical library, physical library, then we would require the technology library, and then RC coefficient file, this which is QRC tech file, then MMF setup we have to do it. Then optional file are block partitions. What actually happen when you are doing a big chip? So we divided the big chip into several blocks, and generally engineer works on one or two blocks or three or four blocks only. One person cannot handle entire the chip. So what we do that we partition entire the chip into blocks, and we provide the block partitioning depth to the block owners. Then come to the pin placement file. Again, in every block we need to place large number of pins that is required to communicate with the another block. Then power plan script, these are optionals. If it is not given, we can do it our own. Then power intent file, then switching activity file, these are the optional files. So moving forward, I would very briefly explain some of the files here. There are lots of files. I cannot explain all the files, but which are major, I will explain here. So first, gate level netlist. It is nothing but your RTL is synthesized RTL. Means your RTL now is converted in terms of standard cells, right? Then coming to the physical library, which is LEF files in terms of, I will talk about the cadence tools. Then we call here a LEF file. It is in ASCII format. That means we can open this file and read this file. Again, inside the LEF file, there are two parts. One is called technology LEF and other is called cell LEF. So in cell LEF, there is a cell name, cell area, pin name, then pin location and pin direction. So these things are written in your LEF file. Moving to next part is your LEAF file, which is also called the timing library or logical library. So in LEAF file, again, it is in ASCII format, or you are using the Synopsys tool, then this file will be in form of .db. .db, again, it's a binary format file. You cannot open and read this file. But yeah, ASCII lib file .lib extension file you can read. So basically here in this file, the unit definitions is mentioned in top, followed by the cell name, then PG pin names, leakage power intent is there, and then for the every input to output pins there is a path which is we called here timing arc, and what time data takes to travel from the input to output, that all the things are information are inside this lib file, right? Moving forward, the technology file, so it could be a separate technology file or it could be inside your technology lib. Again, in this file, it is a ASCII format file. Again, in this file, the manufacturing grids is mentioned. All the layers we are using, all the layers details are here, like layer name, layer type, its preferred routing directions, its minimum width, spacing, and pitch. And for all the metal layers and poly layers also, the sheet resistance is mentioned. Okay, moving forward, there is a file called SDC file, which is very popular. Here we constrain our design. We provide here max fan out, max load constraint, max transition, clock definition, clock uncertainty, clock latency. Then we provide the some clock timing exceptions like multi-cycle paths, false path. These all the things are written in your SDC file. Then one file which is very popularly used is called def file. Whenever we want to exchange the data from one vendor tools to other vendor's tool, we need a def file. So inside your def file, your detail for design is written. Okay, these are few files, but there are lots of files. for a physical design engineer or any VLFI engineers, we must know what information are inside each files, and based on that we can decide what are files required to do any operations. Okay, so moving forward, when all the files we got, we'll do the import design steps. So it is a very first step of PNR design, where we'll get such type of things. Here all the macros are sitting there, and all your standard cell will be outside of your block area. Coming to sanity checks, so next step, once we import the design, it comes the sanity checks. So this check is just to verify whatever input we are going to use is either correct or consistent or not. So basically we do here three types of sanity checks. One is library, second is netlist, and third is SDC checks. So in library check, we just make sure whatever standard cell is being used in our get level netlist is present in logical and physical library or not. It must be present there. Otherwise, we cannot get the whatever delay will offer that cell, and where its pin will be located, what will be its area. That information will be missing. So it should be present in the library. Then coming to the netlist check, we check the quality of netlist which we are using, where major checks are floating inputs and nets. We check the VDD and BFF faults, multi-driven nets, combinational loops, and pin mismatch. These checks we must do before starting the physical design. And STC, again, we check the unconstrained path is there. It should not be there. And then register clocking, each and every register should be clocked. Multi-clock driven registers, unconstrained endpoints, and clock definitions. We define the clock in SDC file. So what is the characteristics of clock? All are written in the SDC file. Okay, so once we are good with the sanity checks, if all are good, we can move forward. Just in this slide, I just want to give an overview that how the partitioning is being done. So as I mentioned, a big block is partitioned in the various sub blocks. We can say it blocks, so it is easy to handle for any engineers. We cannot one person cannot handle entire chips. So every blocks there will be a block owner, and they will entirely take care of the development of that block. Moving forward, in the shape of block, I would like to say there could be very easy shapes like rectangular shapes, where implementation is very easy, and other types are rectilinear shapes. So in rectilinear shapes, there are lots of edges, and it is not easy to place the your macros or standard cells and meeting the timing in such blocks. So its shape could be either rectangular or rectilinear. Generally what happens when you own a block, so the chip owner, means full chip owner, will provide these depths in form of def file, and when you define that def file in your design, you will get these floor plans, right? In case it is not given, then how you will do that? We can create. So we can create the block shape and size based on the total instance area. So as I mentioned in the left file, each and every cell's area is there. We can calculate the total instance area based on that, and we know that there is a factor called utilization factor. That is nothing but it is instance area by your block area. So to find the block area, we need to divide the instance area, total instance area, by the utilization factor, and we will roughly get the total block area which we require to do the PNR. And based on that, we can take a shape and we can start the PNR. In case def is not given, sometimes it happens in initial stage, your block def means shape is not given. So in that case, you can decide your block area and start the design. Moving next slide is pin placement. Once your block shape is defined, we need to place the pins. So for the placing pins, what we need an edge number where we want to place any pins. Then the pin is nothing but it is a metal layer which is going to connect to the another block. So we need to define the metal layer for the pin, and then pin width and pin depth. Okay, so here you can see in this direction, if it is sitting the pin here, so in this direction it will be your depth, and this much is your width, right? Here you can see in case of rectilinear floor plan, how many edges are there, starting from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are lots of edges. Total 12 edges is here. The design challenges in a rectilinear block is quite large. If you have any questions here, you can interrupt me anytime and ask. Otherwise, I'm going to continue all the thing. So better it make interactive. If you have any doubts, you can ask me and stop anytime.
I am having one question.
Yeah, sure.
Width of metal layer is decided during the physical design flow or at the fabrication level?
Okay, so width of metal, you are talking about pin placement related or in general?
In general.
Okay, so in general, when we develop a lower any new node, then your metal width, that is we call minimum width of metal, that is the fixed by that node. Okay, but that is constant only minimum. You cannot draw for example, it is 40 nanometer. In case of 7 nanometer, so M1 is 40 nanometer. It is decided by the foundry. You cannot draw 38 nanometer. If you are going to draw, it will be not fabricated.
Right.
So that's the limitation from the foundry side. But yes, you can draw the larger whatever you want.
Okay.
So once a node is fixed, we will get the minimum width of each and every metals, and that is in your .tf technology file.
Okay, so that width will be decided based upon DRC design rules?
No, actually design rule will be decided based on the metal width.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay. So any question, any other questions, or I should move forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please continue.
Yeah. So once we do the pin placement, then next step, major step is macro placement. Again, macro placement is very, very important step throughout our physical design. Overall QR of your design will depend on the macro placement. If the macro placement is bad, then it is very difficult to meet the timing. You cannot meet the timing, and it will result lots of congestions. So lots of expertise is required to get a better macro placement, else you have to do lots of iteration. So goal of the macro placement is a better QR. Okay, I haven't talked anything about the macros. So those who are not knowing about the macro, it is IP, we can say, or hard block, which is already designed and characterized. What are inside that macro, we don't know. For us, it is a black box. We are just knowing how many pins are there and what is the location of pins. Being a PD engineer, we know that much information only. And we'll place those. What is the functionality? What inside that we don't know. We just use that macro as a black box, and we cannot change anything inside that. So goal of the macro placement is a better QR. Guidelines, there are lots of guidelines, and especially as we come to the lower nodes, the guidelines goes increase. Some of the major guidelines for the macro placement I would like to talk here. The grouping of the macros, here I have put an image, so you can see there are various groups of the macros which are in various colors. Based on the hierarchy, we will do that. So we'll first group the macros as per the hierarchy, then we'll do the analysis of macro to IO connection. So IO, there are lots of pins here. We'll check connectivity with these IO pins to the macro, and based on that, we'll place our macro. A macro should be placed near to the IO, which is having the connectivity. And again, we will check there the level of logics. If there is a lesser level of logics, we will put that macro near to the IO pins. If some macro is having large number of logic levels, then we can put them a bit far. Okay. Then we have to avoid the crisscross placement of the macros. We need to maximize the core area. When I say the core area, then it is the center area. So always we want to maximize this area. How can we maximize that? So we need to place the macros along the boundaries. Okay. Next we have to follow the notch formation. Avoid the notch formations. Notch is something I cannot show here. So if suppose these two macro has removed from here, then this region is called here notch, and it is not good for in placement in point of macro placement point of view. And then channel spacing, we create the channel between these two macro. I mean, this area is called your channel. Hope you are able to see my pointer. So next is macro abutment. Sometimes macro abutment is allowed. Just you have to keep in mind that two pins are not in the abutment side. So it might be your pins are in this case your all the pins are in the right side, and for this macro all the pins are in left side. Then we can abut these two. If not, we can flip also. But only thing is that in abutting side, pins should not be there. Okay. Then partial placement blockage. You know that if some flop will sit here and its logic is and there is not enough space here and its logic is sitting outside in this region, then it is difficult to meet the timing. So we place the placement blockage between these macros, between the macro to boundary. Sometimes we completely block, sometimes we put their partial placement blockage. Okay, then routing blockage. So we know that inside your standard cells, only one metal layers we use to develop the standard cells. For example, if we talk 16 nanometer technology node, so only M1 is used inside your standard cell. So the power routing and signal routing, all the things are done above the M1, M2, M3, M4 onwards. So there is no issue if M2 is going over a standard cell. But in case of macro, we need more metal layers. So it might be having M2, M3, M4 issued inside your macro. So if we do the signal routing over this M2 signal routing over this macro, then definitely it is problematic. It is going to short. So we have to avoid some routing layers over the macro, right? Okay, moving forward, we do the power planning. Once all the macro is placed, we will do the power planning. So goal of the power planning is supply the power to all instances or macros with minimal IR drop. So when I say IR drop, it's a drop in your metal. And we all know that metal is nothing but it is a combination of R and C network. So if we talk about a small part of metal, then it will having some resistance and it will having some capacitance with your substrate, right? So we can think it is a combination of RC network only. So whatever voltage you will supply at the one end of the any metal layers, metal nets, and definitely there will be some drop as some current will flow through that metal, and V2 here will definitely be some lesser than the V1. Again, points come how lesser VT we can tolerate. So every time we they decide at the initial phase like 10% or 15% or 12%, that much drop we can tolerate inside the metal layers. If a drop is larger, then we have to do something to reduce that IR drop. So issue with the power planning is IR drop, and second major issue is electromigration. What is electromigration and how it affects, I will talk in the later slides. So I'm not discussing here electromigration. Moving forward, power planning is done on the higher metal layer because as we move to the higher metal layer, the resistivity of metal is lower because in the higher metal layers the width is larger. Then higher metal layers having the less resistivity, supply voltage comes from the rail and it go to from the stripe and goes to the rail. Okay, so here is the view. These are the power stripes and these are the rails. So in the rail is alternate VDD and VFF lines here, and in between your extender cell will sit. Okay, and when do the IR analysis, something this type of image we will see. So it is nothing but it is indicating in the red area in this region the drop is high, and in the green region it is within your limit. Okay, so now once we done the power planning, we have created the rails. Now we are putting some pre-placed cell. So here major pre-placed cells are end cap cells, well tap cells, and then D cap cells, spare cells. I will talk very briefly about these cells here, why these cells is used and where. So first of all, here is the boundary cells. So boundary cells is having no pins, just it is having the poly layers here. Again, I'm not going in depth why it is used and what are the benefits of using these things. It will be very detailed. So just for information, the boundary cell is required and it is placed along the boundary, and wherever the macro comes in between around this. Obvious when the top side and bottom side also comes the boundary cells that it is not shown. Okay, next important pre-placed cell is well-tapped cells. So well-tapped cells is nothing but it is tapping your N well and P well to the VDD and VFF, and it is not required in the earlier design. If you recall the 180 nanometer technology design, there was not well-tapped cells. That time the standard cell is designed with the tab cells inside each and every standard cell. Now the standard cell is tabless. We call it tabless. So tapping are not there. So we need to put 12 tap cells separately in some particular distance. Here is the placement of 12 tap cells. You can see here. So in this way, we place the well tap cells. Next is decap cells. So here I put the layout of decap cells. It is nothing but you can see here these red parts is your poly, and source and drain. Source drain is shorted and it is connected to ground, and poly is connected to your VDD. So what you can observe from here, it is basically forming a capacitor, nothing else. And we know that capacitor can charge when it gets supplied. It can store a charge, and whenever required, any instantaneous current nearby these cells, it can supply. Okay, moving forward, there are spare cells. So we put some cells in a group. We are not using these cells throughout the physical design, but in issue phase, we see there are requirement of some cells, and that time we already freeze the base layer, so we cannot insert any cells. So we can use these cells. That's why it is called the spare cells. So these type of cells we place before actual placement. So now starting the placement, actual placement. From this slide onwards, Ruchita will take. So over to Ruchita.
So hi everyone, I want to just ask you if you have any question up till now, you can ask. Otherwise, we'll move forward. Am I audible? Hello. Okay, so let's move forward. So Rajesh Bhai has discussed up till floor plan. So the placement is very second stage in physical design flow. So in placement, there are various stages. These are like starting from global placement, then it will follow by legalization and detailed placement. So basically what we will do in global placement, so in global placement, all the standard cells which are basically outside of the core area will be placed inside the particular core area in particular standard cell rows which are created in power planning stages. And these in global placement, it will not tool will not take care that there should not be overlapping on all that. It is just place all the cells and it will not check the connectivity of the cells. It will just randomly place the cell. And in legalization, all the overlaps of the cells among the blocks are removed, and the legalized place of each and every standard cell will be fixed. In detail placement, all the refined solution has been done, and it will make sure that the delay between that cell will be the minimum. So say for example, one cell is connected to few endpoint, few other standard cell, then tool will try to group them all together and try to place near the to its connected cell. So basically all these things are done in placement stage or through the tool. So other thing that we can do in placement stage, that is high fan out net synthesis. As you know that clocks reset and all that signals have many load connected to that, right? So these all nets are saying like having high fan outs. So in high fan out net synthesis, we try to divide the load and try to buffer that nets. So this is all about high fan outnet synthesis. All the spatial cells which are discussed in previous 2 slides were placed inside this stage, and these are some inputs and outputs of placements. We need technology files and all the library, TLU plus file which contains RC information, and we need the database which is from flow plan stage, and need STC, that is constraints, and output will be the def file, and legalized placed cell are there in DB. Yeah, so these all are the inputs and outputs of placement stage. Moving forward, as I say, the standard cell are placed in site rows. So these, you can see tiny dots are there. These all are standard cells, and they are placed inside the core area where the standard cell rows are created. Okay, and these, you can see the rectangle things. These are macros. Okay, so this is how basically standard cell look like when it placed inside the site rows. So how can we say that okay, placement stage is done? So to ensure that, we have to do some checks, that is called sanity checks. So we'll check for the timing report, analyze them, we'll check for the setup timing and all that, check the placement legality, that all the cells are legalized or not, overlapping should not be there, like that. And we also check for the congestion, because all the cells are placed inside the core area, so we have to check for the congestion, that in future it will not create the route congestion. So if there is setup violation for timing and congestion is there, we have to solve in this stage only. Will not move forward with this kind of violation to CTS stage. So this is all about placement stage. So we'll check that, and if it all okay, we can go for the next stage. So that is clock tree synthesis. So what basically we do in clock tree synthesis, before CTS, there is one source point, or we can say one clock port, and all the cells are getting clock from that single source port. And after, so skew will be not balanced before the CTS. So after CTS, we try to design a tree kind of structure. So there will be one source point, and there are some sinks and lifts coming from that source point, and then it will create a tree kind of structure, and each and every cells and macro will get the proper clock, like for sequential cells. So basically the goal for CTS is we have to meet the DRVs, that is max transition capacitance and max fan out, and we try to minimize the skew, and we try to minimize the insertion delay. These are the goals for CTS. And yeah, CTS is like done before routing, because clocks route are to be given more priority. Okay, so we do CTS before routing. So these all are the inputs and outputs. We need some DRVs constraints, that are max transition limit, max capacitance limit, max fan out limit, and which kind of buffer we want to use. We want to use inverters or buffer, which are the don't touch cells. So these are the some inputs, and we need a detailed database for placement. We have to like tell the tool that our target skew is what, and what is our target latency. So we direct the tool to get the required skew and latency. And output will be clock timing reports, area power reports, and clock tree is built in our placement DB. So like after CTS, we have added several buffers and inverters inside our, design. So it might happen that whatever the results, timing results and congestion results are there in placement stage will get violated. So it is also get better, it is also get worse. So it depends on our, CTS structure. So we have to take care. So timing violation can be introduced inside that, and we can optimize our clock tree after analyzing the reports. So these are some techniques, so we can optimize our clock tree. That is like we can do buffer sizing, we can relocate the buffer, or we can use different kind of buffer or inverters. All these are the techniques to optimize the clock tree. Yeah. So these are the checklist after CTS, how we evaluate that our tree is good enough. It will not giving us a worst result, or it will not degrade the result in routing. So we'll check on that all the non-default rules which is given to us are applied on that or not. Shielding is done. Shielding is basically to avoid crosstalk, so we used to do shielding around the clock nets. We also check for hold violation. So we try to fix this hold violation during the CTS stage only. We also check that if the buffer or inverter are used in the tree structure are clock buffer and clock inverter rather than just normal buffer and inverter. And also we'll check that whatever our target latency or skew is achieved or not. So these all are checklists. So after passing this checklist, we can move forward with the next stage in physical design. Yeah, so that is routing. Yeah. So basically routing is the thing that we connect each and every cell with the interconnects, and we do the physical connection. So all the metals we stretch from one cell to another. That is basic routing. And there are basically two types of two stages in routing. One is global routing. So in global routing, randomly all the nets are connected to its logical connection. So in here we just make sure that each and every cell get connected. We don't try to optimize the length of the net. So this is the first stage in routing. Global routing will be done. So here you can see the overlapping is the net length is like random net length is there. So following by global routing, there is second stage is detail routing. So in detail routing, each and every net will get the proper route, and the tool will try to optimize the net length. So basically we'll get the optimized routing after these two stages. Okay, so I would like to ask if you have any question, you can feel free to ask. It will be good if the session is more interactive.
Yeah, participants, please ask the questions if you are having any.
So if not, I would like to invite Rajesh Yadav to take over from here. He will discuss sign off stage. Yeah.
Okay. So once we done the routing, complete the PNR stage, can we go to fabrication directly? Obvious not. There is a stage called sign-off stage, and foundry will tell you we cannot accept your GDS for the fabrication unless and until uh, you are providing the report that your design is passed from all the rules. So that is called here sign-offs. In industry we call the sign-off stage. So once we done the PNR completely, then we enter into the sign-off stage. Again, there are different way of working the industry. Some companies having the sign-off teams entirely different, and some of the companies sign-off and PNR is done together. So we generally do the sign-off and PNR. So in sign-off stage, basically we talk about three types of sign-off. One is timing, second is IR sign-off, and third is PV sign-off. Yes, we do the logical equivalence check also. In very brief, in timing sign-off, we check the max transition checks, which Ruchita has talked while building the clock tree. This constraint is provided in the CTS stage. So max transition checks, then max cap checks is there, max fan out checks, setup timing checks, hold timing checks. I will talk brief about all these checks in the next slide. And in IR sign off, we do the static IR analysis, dynamic IR analysis, and electromigration analysis. And PV sign off is more related to your the fabrication things, like your geometry related constraints is there. So we check their base DRC checks, metal DRC checks, LVS checks, and antenna checks. Okay, and we do the logic equivalence check. So coming to the timing sign-off, which we also call STA, that is static timing analysis. So in first of all, max transition check. So max transition checks, max capacitance, and max fan-out checks. These are all collectively we call DRV, design rule violations. So we first fix these DRVs, and max transition checks is nothing but we cannot tolerate the transition transition time to a specific durations. If transition is like this one, what will happen? What do you think? First of all, it will consume lots of power. The short circuit power will increase, we know that, and definitely all the means delay of a fail is proportional to your slew and load. So if more is the slew, its delay of the driving nets driving cells will be high. Again, one important thing is that our standard cell is characterized already. There is a characterization limits of the each and every cells. And if we are violating that transition share, we're not sure that what delay that cell will offer, because that is the out of bound. That's why we need to keep our transitions within a limit. So we put the limitation in the CTS stage that we should not exceed the max trans. Okay. We have to fix the max trans violation. There are ways to fix the max trans violations. I'm not going deep inside that. The next is max capacitance check. So we know that, as I mentioned earlier, these nets are nothing but a combination of resistance and capacitance, and each inputs of a cell having certain capacitance. So whatever capacitance is present in these nets and the input pin of its fan out will see as a load for the driving cell. So here this cell is the driving cell, and we put the limit that the maximum capacitive load should not be exceed from a certain limit. So something picofarad we limit put on the CTS stage that no cell should drive more than that capacitive limit. And if after doing the PNR, it is existing that some cell is violating that capacitive load max limit, then we have to fix that. Next check is max fan out checks. So again, we put the limit on the maximum fan out. Obvious fan out will increase, then it will violate to the capacitive load, capacitance, max capacitance violations. Okay. Then next, very popular checks. Everyone knows that setup timing checks and hold timing checks. What is exactly setup and hold timing checks? I'm not going to talk about that. It is very well-known things, and everyone reads in academics also. So here I would just tell that to capture the data properly in very brief and avoid metastability state, we need to meet the setup timing requirement in every sequential elements, right? And in very crisp way, I would say the latency L1 here, the latency between this clock to all these pin of the launch flop, that is latency L1 the plus the arrival time of the data at this capture flop, that means the combination of L1 plus clock to Q delay for this launch flop plus the combinational delay of this one. Obviously, we will take the max delay in case of setup analysis. So these three parts will consist your arrival time, and that arrival time should be less than your required arrival time. And what is required arrival time here? So it is nothing but the latency L2, which is the delay between these clocks to the capture flop clock pin. Okay, so this is your clock path, right? And the period of your clock cycle, right? Then there are two terms here: setup timing of this capture flop. So if you go through, then you will find every sequential elements having some setup and hold requirement inside that. So we need to subtract that setup time, and clock is we consider some clock uncertainty. So TS is your clock uncertainty. Then in lower nodes we do the common path pessimism removal one, and so that is again till this point we are considering here the max delay, and in this path we are taking the mean delay. So difference till this common point, the max delay difference and max and mean delay difference we are considering here in CPPR. I am talking in terms of OCB only. In lower D rates, that calculation is not so simple. It is quite complex. If I talk about SOCB, then it is quite different. So this is the setup checks. Similarly, we do the hold checks. Again, it is setup check is that data should reach to the capture flop before that clock age, and in hold check we know that data should not reach before on the same age. Data should not reach before the hold requirement of this capture flop. So these two checks we must do, and we have to pass the hold and setup timing checks. So here you can see the setup check is done between these two and hold from here. Okay, moving forward, IR analysis. So in IR analysis, basically we do static IR analysis and dynamic IR analysis and electromigration analysis. So in static IR analysis, it basically checks the robustness of our power delivery network. And for doing the static, as its name suggests, no switching activity is considered here. Means we are not considering the switching of instances here. So basically, we check here the power delivery network only. Okay, this figure again shows that these are the power delivery networks, and in red regions there is a lesser power availability. So one thing we know that how our power moves. I have talked something in the power planning stage. So power planning is done in the top metal, and it is coming to your bottom metal through the vias. So again, drop in your metals in vias. Lots of drops is there. So we have to maintain the availability, power availability. I mean voltage availability to each and every instances within a certain drop. If it goes below that, obviously we know that if we are reducing the power supply of a instance, definitely it is going to offer larger delay. So again, it is going to affect everything. So we set the IR drop limit. We have to have maintained that IR drop limit. In dynamic IR analysis, we basically consider the switching activity each and every instance. So instantaneous power drop taken care in your dynamic IR analysis. And I have mentioned a decap cell in the beginning, where we are talking about the pre-placed cell. So decap cells here used to take care of the dynamic IR analysis. Dynamic IR violations. That is useful here. Next, talking about electromigration analysis. So it is only due to high current density. As we know that we are going to the lower geometry, lower nodes, every things is being scaled. So definitely our metal layers is also being scaled. And if we are scaling the metal layer, metal's width, definitely we are going to reduce the cross-sectional area, so current density is going to increase. If current density is going to increase, so what could happen? For a longer duration, it could cause your hillocks or void formation like this. I'm trying to see this image. So for a longer duration, such type of things could happen. And if hillock is formed there, what is going to its result? It will short these two metals, right? And void can cause your open. If this is going to void, and it will increase, it will the break. So we can say that through the electromigration analysis, we can ensure how long our chip is going to work. No company will ready to fabricate a chip which is working right now perfectly, but after 6 months or after 1 year, it is going to stop working. For the reputation of company, they will make sure that our chip should work at least 5 years or 10 years. We call it reliability of chip. So we ensure the reliability of chip also. Next, come to the physical verifications. These are very common things. If you are doing some analog things also, so you will do the DRC checks. You are making some circuits layout like inverters also. So after drawing the layout, you must do the design rule checks. So again, in lower nodes, the complexity is large. So day by day, the design rules is increasing. There are two types of DRC checks we do. One is the base. We do the separately base layer DRC and metal layer DRC. So base layer DRC, we will say the below the poly layers. So all the layers which is used to fabricate our transistors and related DRC comes in inside your base DRC. So the main DRCs are here: annual related DRC, oxide and diffusion related DRC, poly related DRC, implant and width related DRC. We using various VT layers. So related to that DRC is counting implant and width related DRC, then cut poly layer related DRC. Then one thing is here latch up. I have mentioned in the pre-placed cell, there is a cell called well-tapped cells, right? So if that well-tapped cell is not placed in a max limit of that distance between two well-tapped cells, it causes a latch-up. You must know the latch-up phenomena, which can entirely permanently damage your chip once the latch-up occurred. So that's related. Also, we check the DRC. We call it LUP, and definitely we do the density related DRC. So one thing that we do after doing the PNR, we do the metal filling, which I have not talked here. So to maintain the uniformity while etching each layer, we build each layer step by step, and we do the CMP, that is chemical mechanical polishing. And to maintain the uniformity, we fill the metals so that it will be uniform throughout your wafer. That for maintaining that, we have a check that is called density related checks. Coming to the metal the DRC, the main DRC here comes minimum width. As our node is means every metal is having a minimum width below which we cannot draw. If it is not drawn the minimum width, then it will come to the minimum width violations. Then the minimum spacing, minimum area, there is a via enclosure. We know that the via is used between connecting two different metals, different layer of metals, like M2 and M3 there. If we want to connect M2 to M3, then we have to put a VR there. Again, when we are putting the via, it should be enclosed all four sides by the metal. If it is not following, then we will see their via enclosure. Then there is a cut metal related DRC, and in the lower nodes, especially in 7 nanometer and below, we have the double patterning related DRC there. Then the next check is layout versus schematic checks. And one more important check is here, antenna checks. So antenna check is nothing but it is related to fabrication, but we have to take care in the designing part. Basically, when we draw any metals and it is connected to poly, we all know that the gate oxide is being very thin each and every day, and that is very sensitive part of a transistor. If the metal length is high, actually what happens, if metal layer is longer and we are etching that through the plasma etching, which is a dry etching technique for etching. The plasma, which is nothing but the ions, will be collected on that metal, and if the quantity of that ion collection in the metal is high, then that metal, that ions will causing the potential will get discharged through your gate oxide, and that is causing the permanent damage of the gate oxide. I mean, the transistor will complete wastage, and that will not work. So avoid that things. We have antenna checks. We have to follow that. So all these checks related rules provided by the foundry. We call it collectively rule deck files. So in there are the rule deck files for DRC, the rule deck files for the antenna, and obviously we cannot do all these checks manually. So in EDA tools, we just provide the Ruldeck files, and we provide the GDS or OSS file, and tool will compare these two things and report where is the violation, and then we have to visualize those violation, and we have to fix that. So these was the about the physical verification, and we are done with the complete PNR flow and sign off. Hope it was means everyone get what we are delivering, and we would love if anyone has any questions here. Thank you for your time.
Dear participants, if you have any query, just feel free to ask. Is it there?
So, Rajesh sir, can you just briefly explain that which are the objectives we will have to consider while doing this various steps, like starting from floor planning, placement, routing, CTS, etc., etc.
Okay, sure, Mitesh.
Yeah.
So the first we have mentioned that first major step is floor plan. So in floor plan, I have already mentioned in the placing the macro. Overall, your quality of design is depending on the macro placement. So there we want a good macro placement. If I talk about goal, then goal should be your timing in the floor plan. We once do the floor plan, then timing and congestion should not be very high here. Coming to the placement stage, in placement stage, we do the actual placement of the standard cells, and here the major things which we consider, I mean, if I talk goal, then goal should be better setup timing, means WNS and TNS of the setup analysis should be lower, so that we can easily close the design. One thing. Second is congestion. If congestion should be controllable in this stage. If it is not, we need to another iterations we will do, because if we move forward with the congestion, definitely we are ending up with lots of DRCs at the end. Congestion, it is nothing but whatever the required resources for routing is required there, and whatever the available, the differences between these two is reporting as a congestion. So congestion and I would say congestion and timings, only setup timing here. So should be goal of your placement stage. Coming to the CTS stage, CTS we have provided the constraint. How we are building the clock tree. So quality of the clock tree is the major concern. If I talk goal, then it's our goal should be latency, that is the minimum latency and minimum skew. We can say that latency and skew should be goal in our CTS stage. And once we build the real clock tree, we routed the clock tree. So in that stage, we also check the hold. So first time we are checking in these all these steps. First time we are checking the hold time. So in CTS stage, hold time should be means within a limit where we can trust that we can close. If it is not, then we have to analyze and fix those things. Moving forward in the route.
Yeah, so in CTS,
yeah,
is there any mechanism to calculate the number of inverters or buffers? In the sense, how we can able to decide that this many number of buffers we need to put in this path in order to reduce the skew and latency?
Okay, As for the algorithm of VTF building,
Okay.
we just provide, we constraint in terms of latency, not the number of clock buffers and clock inverters. We provide this much time. In this much of time, you should propagate your clock. And based on that, the tools algorithm take care of that latency, and based on that, they put the clock inverter and buffers. So we limiting the latency number there, not the number of inverter and buffer. Inverter and buffers numbers calculate the tool through its algorithm, and one important fact which comes in the picture is transition. Max trans. So based on the max trans and your latency number, those tool will decide and put your buffers and inverters in the clock tree. Am I clear?
Yeah. So one more point I want to add.
Okay.
In this,
Just a second. Let me mute. Yes, Ruchika.
okay, so just one point I want to add in this, that as the question was that how can we decide the number of inverters and buffer to build the CTS. So in case of normal blocks, normal PNR blocks, we should not decide that. Tool will decide that. We just need to give the minimum like skew number and latency number. But if the clock tree we are building it is custom, so in that we are building that from scratch. So we are deciding how many number of inverters or which drive strength of buffer or inverter we need. So in that case, we decide the particular tap points. And on the basis of that, we'll give the even number of inverters and buffer to the tool. But the whole process will be custom in that case.
Okay.
So yes, we try to balance the skew through the customized tree.
Yeah, got your point.
Hello.
Yeah.
Can you suggest any backend tools?
Backend tools for like we are actually using both of in PNR for Synopsys we are using ICC2 right now, and in Cadence we are using Innovus. For sign off, we are using for Cadence is Tempus, and in Synopsys, we are using Primetime. Yeah.
Okay.
So, quick query. Recently, we have seen that the flow people have approached more towards the open source softwares. So many of the academic institutes are there which are not having the access to the premium institutes which you have mentioned in your earlier slides. So is it really possible these days? Do we have those options available with us that we can migrate the at least at the academic level we can get the exposure of this DFT process with the help of open source tools, or still there is no such tools available?
Yes, Smart Mixer. I have a bit idea about the open source tools, but in industry, we are not using the open source tool right now. But yes, people are started using, and that is a good thing, I believe, because you know what prices the EDA company is charging for the tools. I won't say that it's very high, because they have involved lots of research and development to develop the tool. So definitely they are asking the charge as per their investment in this research and development things. Again, coming to the open source tools, I believe in future they will be in very good stage. Some of these things experimentally did the tape out also, as per my knowledge. Yes, list of tools. Right now, I'm not remembering the. I have checked. There are lots of tools. I forgot the name of that project. You can search it in GitHub. There is completely one repository is there in GitHub. If you will search there, and you can easily install in your local machine from downloading from that. And they also provide the GPD means PDK there. So that area is being very developing. Open tools is doing good, but again, we are in industry, and we are only doing this industry standard tools. We are not allowed to jump on right now. We are not allowed to do things on using the open source tools.
Yes.
But yes, where tools availability, I know every institution, and we cannot afford all the tools. So in that case, if students or any faculties want to explore more, then definitely open tools is one of the best options in there.
Actually, the SPICE tool, which is a freeware EDA tool, it supports this majority of steps of this physical design.
Okay.
SPICE as a simulator.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So one more thing, as we have Ruchita ma'am with us, and she has recent experience with the interaction to the academics. So my question is, freshers these days, when they are appearing for the DFT interviews, they are preparing for the setup, full-time, metastability, and all those basic concepts. So can you just suggest one standard literature or book which students can refer when they want to appear for the DFT interviews? Freshers.
Okay, so there is one book called from J. Bhaskar. It is for for ST and all. One PD at essential book is also there for basic fundamentals of physical design, and that is ST for like DFT and all this is covered in that book. So students can refer that one.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, if the participants are having any questions still, they definitely can ask. Feel free to ask your queries.
Yes, definitely. We will love to answer. If any questions, you can ask any type of questions here.
Hello, Marmik sir.
Yes, sir.
Is there any session on these backend tools regarding any practical session for this workshop?
No, we have the lab session.
One lab session is there, that is based upon the SPICE tool. So using the SPICE, we are planning to discuss how one can able to write the netlist for the CMOS based circuitry, how one can able to simulate it. So that we have planned.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Any other queries?
Any other queries? Yeah.
For the session especially? Okay. So in this session, Rajesh, sir, you have explained the ASIC design flow, the variety of tools available for all the processes regarding the DFT, and all the other concepts of DFT, starting from setup and hold and all the advanced concepts and clock tree synthesis and everything. So the session was really very well planned, and I'm very much thankful to you and Ruchita ma'am for your time and answering all the queries diligently. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, Marmik, sir, thank you. It's our pleasure to present this session. We are very happy to interact with you all. Ruchita, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really great experience, and it is really great experience of sharing our industry knowledge with you all. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Rajesh.
Yeah.
Thanks to all.
So participants, that's it for the day 2. Tomorrow, again as per the schedule, we'll be continuing the expert sessions. So thank you very much all the participants for your active participation. Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Bye.
Dear participants, we have done with the day 2 session. So we are signing off over here. So you are requested to join on day 3 sharp at 9:30 as per the schedule given to you. So you may leave the meeting.